Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the Sandwich Road Fire Station to order. Time is 7 o'clock. My name is Chris Simler, and I'm one of the co-chairs of our building committee. George Rogers is the other co-chair, and he's recovering nicely, he said, from some surgery, so I'll be chairing this meeting. First, I want to just thank Julian Sousa, town manager, Jennifer Mullen, and Melanie Bush for coordinating this and getting this going for us. We'll do some quick introductions. The intent tonight is we're really excited to present what we've been working on for this new fire station, and we'll go over a quick history where we are and show you some renderings of where we are now, and then we're going to ask for some input and to get feedback so we can make it an even better project. So again, I'm Chris Simler, the co-chair.
Steve Kirby with the Vertex Companies, with the OPM for the project.
Boyd DeMello, member of the building committee and a member of the Falmouth Fire and Rescue Department.
Jeff Shaw, I'm principal of Context Architecture.
Ellen Light, project manager at Context Architecture.
So what I wanted to do is just tell about the makeup of this building committee, which is really a nice one. We have a mix of, I come from the construction, public sector, management, and we have others like that on the team. And we also have fire department prior and former, and so we're bringing the best that we think of both worlds of the technical aspects of design and construction to making it sure that it's safe and operational for the fire department. So we really have a good team that's been very helpful. I just wanted to say is that the mission we were given as a building committee was to look at the space on Sandwich Road that was already pre-selected, and a fire department type facility program was already given to us, and our task was to how do we make that into the most cost-effective, safe, meeting the fire department needs, sustainable, a good neighbor, fitting into the environment, and cost effective. So all these things was our mission. So tonight I just wanted to, I appreciate it, we're not here to debate the past, why this site was located and things outside of our purview. We're here to show you, our mission was to present an option and then take it to town meeting for voter approval. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve for a little history of how we got here.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everybody. As Chris said, the committee was formed, was actually formed in April of 2001 to facilitate the construction of the new fire station at the Sandwich Road site. Their first order of business in July was to hire an OPM, which is required by Mass General Law for any construction project that's estimated construction cost is over $1.5 million. Vertex, my company, was chosen to assist and represent the town's interest throughout the design and construction. And then our next step was to hire the designer. We went through the required RFQ process and interviewing process. In October of 21, Context Architecture was hired to provide the AE services, architectural and engineering services for the design of the fire station. And also a part of our tasks as OPM and architect and engineer, not only for the design, develop the design, but also develop the total project budget that would be placed on the warrant for the upcoming April annual town meeting. In order to do the project, from the start, a space needs and programming review was done with the fire department and reviewed by the building committee, along with the existing site survey of the property at 878 Sandwich Road, and then conceptual designs were developed. Those conceptual designs were reviewed, and Context moved on to schematic design and building layout, which was actually approved in the beginning of January. And then exterior building massing was just recently approved on the 20th of this year. We also had a presentation to the building committee for the HVAC system, which is a variable refrigerant flow system with a dedicated outdoor air supply. and they were looking at radiant flooring in the apparatus bay as a possible add alternate. So those items, although we're in schematic design, which is early in the design phase, those particular items have been selected and approved by the building committee. We are, again, working towards developing a cost estimate. Those schematic design documents are going to be going to the independent cost estimator the end of this week in anticipation of being back to us for review on the 15th of February, in anticipation for review with the building committee on the 17th, and then going in front of the finance committee and then ultimately the select board in advance of the, again, April annual town meeting. So at this time, I'll turn over the presentation to Jeff Shaw and Ellen Light to go through the PowerPoint.
Sorry, I just have some housekeeping. This is a masked event to let people know when you come up and ask questions. I believe you can remove your mask, but if you don't have a mask, there's some out back that can be provided. And I also want to recognize the chief here, Chief Smith, for his incredible help and programming and really being involved in helping us develop this program. So thank you. So context.
All right, well, thank you for having us tonight. Again, my name is Jeff Shaw. I'm principal at Context Architecture. Our firm has designed dozens of fire stations around the state of Massachusetts and New England, and we're excited to be here in Falmouth to work on this station. The committee has been excellent so far to work with and really expeditious in making some initial critical decisions. But we are at the beginning part of the process. We are at the beginning of the design phase, which will lead to further design, which will lead to final construction drawings, which will ultimately lead to constructing the building. So it's great to have an opportunity to get feedback from the public at this very early stage. We did a little bit of introductions already. This slide really just lists out the building committee members, town staff, and the Falmouth Fire Department working group that's been working on the project alongside Vertex and Context. The site here on Sandwich Road, it's a little hard to see, and I don't know if I can get this. Oh, it worked. Right there. Yeah, it's a little dark. It's a little washed out, I think, for people in the audience. I don't know if we can do anything about the lighting at this point, but the project site's approximately right here. As many of you know, there's some recreation fields next door, and then there's a church on the other side, as well as a neighborhood across the street. We have already completed, as Steve said, a survey of the site, geological test pits to understand the soil type and its structural properties, as well as a hydrant flow test to make sure that we have enough pressure on the site, water pressure on the site. For those who aren't familiar with the site, right now it's fairly wooded. There's a trail that runs through it, which you can see here in this photo, and the rest of it's covered by a pretty good amount of trees. One of the first things we did, or the first thing we did, is work with the fire department and the building committee to develop a building program. And this is a very important document that basically allows us and the town to understand how much space is going to be necessary. So we look at the way the fire department operates, the requirements for this particular building, and how it needs to be organized. And there's a multi-page, probably 60-page document that goes through each space in detail, lists out all of the equipment, the staffing, parking needs, all of the finishes, HVAC, all throughout. We also apply the building code, the energy codes, and we look very carefully at the way fire stations need to be designed today to meet health and safety for firefighters. You're probably familiar with recent reports about cancer rates in the fire department, and one of the ways we design stations these days is to really minimize contamination, cross-contamination from the fire apparatus and other vehicles that have been at fire sites, keeping that particulate out of the living areas so we can design it with hot, medium, and cool zones to really protect people that live in this building 24 hours a day. This is a zoomed-in version of the proposed site plan as voted on by the building committee. We looked at actually multiple options, settled on this one with the building committee. Sandwich Road runs along the slide here at sort of a diagonal. North is up, so the building currently is about 45 degrees angled from north. Faces Sandwich Road to the southeast, and building sort of at the southern part of the site so that we can have a driveway return for the apparatus. This will be a drive-through station, so the apparatus will come out onto Sandwich Road, go and respond to the call, and then return back behind the station where there's also staff parking. There'll be a separate driveway off of Sandwich Road for public entry with some public parking right at the entry. We're also planning to provide the provisions for solar power on this building. You can't probably see it in this slide, it's very light, but the way the roofs are designed, there'd be areas for solar panels here to help offset the electrical costs. The building plan is very simple for a fire station. It's 3 apparatus bays, double deep to allow for some storage of additional equipment and expansion, next to a dormitory wing, which has a number of dorm rooms, living space, wellness room, gym, shower facilities, and then public entry and some office space at the front. The middle portion is dedicated to apparatus storage or equipment storage that is used for the apparatus, turnout gear storage for their fire gear, and a very critical series of spaces in the middle that is the decontamination zone, as I mentioned before, transitioning firefighters from their bunker gear so they can wash equipment down, wash the gear, and ultimately end up through showers that allow them to wash themselves before they go into the clean side of the building. It's a really critical piece of modern fire station design. These are early renderings of the proposed design. The building committee looked at, I believe, 3 or 4 different versions of the building with flat roofs and pitched roofs, as you see here, and ultimately selected this as the preferred approach. These are artist-drawn renderings because we haven't yet actually finalized the design of the station, so they're preliminary at this point. This is depicting the station as viewed from the north side of Sandwich Road from the park area, seeing the 3 apparatus bays with a pitched roof, as well as the main public entry and administrative section of the building. And then from the other side, looking a little bit more towards the north, you can see the same portions of the building, but then you can now see the living quarters here with a part of the building that's bumped out, and you can start to see those solar panels that show up on the southwest-facing roofs. So we have some more to do, quite a bit more actually. We'll be looking at sustainability and energy efficiency in more detail. As Steve said, we've already selected the mechanical system, which will help with that study. We'll be looking at the potential for how much power will be able to be generated from the rooftop PV. We'll be looking at any sustainability elements that the town would like to incorporate. There's probably a few we're already doing in this design. And then most importantly, we'll be looking at rebates and incentives that we can get from the utilities before going any further. We'll also be developing the site in a lot of different ways. As the design develops, we'll be reviewing it, as Steve said, as we continue to go forward along the schedule. We'll be looking at materials in more detail for the building envelope, the outside walls and roofs, and the interiors, and a whole host of other items, most importantly being the cost analysis that Steve mentioned. I know this is going to be very hard to read, but this is the project schedule. As I said, we're really very close to the beginning of this project. We're about right here, and you can see how much more there is to do. In fact, there's so much more, we put a break line in it. You can't even fit it all on one page. The cost estimates, as Steve said, will begin to be received. We'll then review those cost estimates while we continue developing the design. That purple line says design development. And then town meeting here in April, we'll be able to have a developed design, a cost estimate that goes along with it, presented for the town's approval at that meeting. Should it be successful, we'll be able to then begin developing the bid documents, bidding the project, and ultimately constructing the project. So that was a little brief, but I'm sure you may have many questions to ask, and I'll turn it back over to the chair for the next step.
All right, thank you. I wanted to give Boyd the opportunity. Do you want to say anything on behalf of the fire department and this program and design?
So the building committee turns to the fire department, and there's an internal working group that we work closely with, which included the chief and myself and several other members of the department, work closely with context and designing and coming up with, we provided them with what our needs or what we project our needs to be, and then context took those information and turned it into what we think is a really, at this time, a solid plan moving forward, taking into consideration our current operation, and then also taking into consideration future growth for the department down the road, which is important, and we've seen in other previous stations and development over many years here in the fire department that we've had to add things here and there, or we're right up against it when we move in the door. So we're trying to plan for the future a little bit here, and I think we've done that with this plan.
All right, well, thank you. And with that, I'd like to start the question and answer. If you have a question, if you want to raise your hand, come to the podium, state your name and where do you live, and we'd be looking forward to hear your comments, good, bad. We could use some, get the flavor, please.
Hi, and thank you for taking my question. My name is Rosemary Dreger-Carey, and I'm a member of the Energy Committee, Falmouth Climate Action Network, and also the representative for CVEC, Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative for Falmouth. And so I just came tonight I'm thrilled at what I've seen so far of the plan. It looks beautiful, and I'm glad that you're addressing sustainability so well. I just wanted to make sure you're aware of the Cape and Vineyard Electric Cooperative, cvecinc.org, in case anybody else is interested. It's a public cooperative that develops and owns renewable electric generation facilities to member Mass communities. And Falmouth is a Mass community, a member, as is every town on the Cape and Islands. Since 2007, CVEC has assisted Cape towns in procuring or exploring their options for solar, procuring the best pricing, and just generally supporting with their expertise the development of renewable energy systems, battery storage, and electric vehicle infrastructure. So the fire departments of Yarmouth and Oak Bluffs have used CVEC for their solar arrays, as has the Sandwich Police Department and Dennis Yarmouth High School and dozens of other municipal facilities on the Cape. So I urge you to make contact with CVEC to see what kind of help they can offer, and I'd be happy to extend to make those connections for you, as well as with the fire departments of Yarmouth and Oaks Bluffs. That's about it. Thank you very much.
Well, no, thank you for that. Does anyone have a comment? We're fully in support of that.
That's great. We'll be contacting, definitely.
Good. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Paul Sellers, Old Dock Road, West Falmouth. Just a couple of questions, because we're having a hard time seeing the schematics and the drawings and the timeline up on the screen. So a few things. What do you anticipate as the equipment apparatus needs for this station coming out of the gate, I guess, when it first initially opens?
Sure, I'd ask Boyd to answer that.
Initially, we anticipate an engine and an ambulance there. We're planning on a possibility of relocating a boat and trailer out that way. That area of town does have most of the ponds and lakes in town of Falmouth that we serve, so it's a prudent consideration on our part. Currently, we're pretty tight with our space as it is, so it allows us some expansion growth there.
Sure. So largely 2 vehicles anyway at this point.
Initially, it'd be an ambulance and an engine.
And the staffing, we couldn't get a good look at the dormitory area there. What does that accommodate? You know, how many firefighters are we talking about?
So I scrolled back so you could see it. There's 6 dorm rooms planned. You can see them here on this side. Each of them has 1 bed in it to begin with. They're planned to be big enough that in an emergency, you can bring a cot in there and actually house 2 firefighters. So it could be a double occupancy and have 12 in there, but normally it'd be 1 per room, which is the current best practice for fire station design.
Great. And as far as the administrative area, what would that really be utilized for? What do you envision seeing?
So
A complement of people that would be in the administrative area?
sure, certainly, and I probably use the word administrative probably more broadly than it actually happens in a station like this, because these aren't administrators really, they're firefighters on duty. This is the watch room. There would be a firefighter in there writing reports, and this is a sort of a muster room, and Boyd can go into more detail, but both of those spaces would be used to conduct the regular business of those fire crews that were on duty that day, writing reports and other administrative matters.
Sure.
Want to add that?
So following up on Jeff's comments, that front room is more the daily operations room where an officer or such would handle staffing assignments and stuff. The back muster room would be used for training or an opportunity for someone coming back that may have to finish some reports or what have you, or maybe studying for something or doing some training lessons in there and,
Sure.
and such.
And I guess going back to the staffing question, I realize it's outside of the planning design, but 6 firefighters, does our current staffing accommodate that station and maintaining the existing stations we have in town? Or before this is completed, are we going to have to, seek more firefighters?
This committee's looking at building the station on Sandwich Road. I can't speak to what the plan is going down the road for staffing. That's not in my purview.
Sure.
This station, though, I can say that we're planning for growth. We've looked at this hard, and for instance, other stations in town, we've added bedrooms to, including the headquarters station, due to the increased staffing we've already. So we're trying to be cost-effective and looking for the future at the same time, because it's easier to do it now than it is to come back and add something on later. So I don't think we're too far out of the realm of meeting both of those goals right now with this plan.
Sure. Yeah, I just hate to come to town meeting with this plan and not have some sort of a long-range vision for how we're going to accommodate the staffing levels for increased fire department stations. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your question.
Good evening. I am Lauren Rigney. I'm a full-time resident in Hatchville at 16 Little Farm Lane. My wife and I are there full-time. If you go to the overhead view, you'll see there's a neighborhood directly behind the station. The private residence is across the street, but also us directly behind it. I believe we're the only private residence that directly abuts this property. I guess the question is a couple of them. One, is this correct on the outline here with the dots where it will be and all the tree line behind it will remain in place, which would provide privacy for us? This goes straight up to our driveway. The other question would just be around sound and privacy mitigation.
Well, yes, your question, there'll be a buffer with we're not clearing all the trees out.
Okay.
The second one, I'll turn over to the architects, but yes, we put a lot of thought into light pollution, noise, and to be a good neighbor, and I'll turn over to context to talk, but if you have suggestions, please.
No, we're very much in support. Anything that can help the town of Falmouth and bring about public safety is great. Just wanted to make sure we're aware that there is a house now directly abutting the property as well.
Yeah, that's actually very astute. The project site, as you can see here, resembles that rectangle that we saw in the prior slide. So we aren't, even though it's necessary, it sort of shows, oops, how did I do that? bear with me, there we go. Even though it sort of shows everything kind of looks like it's been clear cut, that isn't necessarily what's going to happen. This is the early plan that we have so far, and there'll be features that we need to have, like septic and stormwater recharge, which will take some land area, but we were not planning on cutting everything down right up to the property line, so as much buffer as we can leave intact, we will. That was part of the committee's goals. We also were trying to be very mindful about where to site the building on the property, so we were as least disruptive as possible. And as far as lighting goes, all of the fixtures will be designed to be dark sky compliant so that they won't be shining light into people's living rooms or up into the sky. The intent is to have all the lights have virtually no spillage off of the property line.
And sound mitigation for the neighborhood, same idea too. We've been here for a year. I've heard that there are town ordinances about sirens and so forth. Just wondering some clarification on that as well.
Yeah, Boyd, you may want to speak to how the fire department operates.
I appreciate it.
Well, the short version of how the fire department operates, we want to be good neighbors to you, and we understand that we're not an overly noisy crowd of people that are working there. But we do come and go from time to time, and we're aware of the neighbors. And a lot of that has been discussed at the building committee, and especially regarding light of the engines coming out and affecting those new neighbors of ours from across the street. We've taken a lot of that into consideration, but we want to be a good neighbor to you.
And
We're excited to be out here. It's been a long time coming.
awesome. Sounds good. Thank you guys so much. Have a good night.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, okay, sir.
Hi, my name's Susan Richmond. I'm a full-time resident as well, also a member of the Falmouth Climate Action Network. I am so happy to hear some of the plans that you guys have. I think it's really good for the town, and I think it's very forward-looking. So thank you for that. In particular, I love the solar aspect of it, of course. And I think the way you've cited the building makes sense. I'm thrilled with it. Couple of questions. Also, looking forward, thinking about, is there a possibility you've got parking for both the public and for the employees, the firefighters? Is there a possibility of putting charging stations there for the EVs? Looking really far down the road, but maybe hopefully not, even the fire trucks potentially. Just thinking about, as we're building this building, what can we do looking forward now that would prevent having to retrofit in the future? Couple of other thoughts that just came to my head, most of which I'm sure you've considered. But when you're looking at the HVAC, thinking about heat pumps as opposed to fossil fuels would be one. And then lastly, things that just come through my head, thinking about climate and the storms. Is there, thinking about resiliency, does it make any sense to think about undergrounding some of the cables, some of the electric work for this station? Thank you.
Thanks
Well,
for your
Yeah, those
questions.
are all great questions. I'll just hit a few that I can. Yes, climate resiliency. This, I believe, is going to be a 50-year design type structure. It's not designated an emergency official shelter, but could be used and is going to be up and operational in storms. And so it's important to have that. The HVAC, I can let the architect talk more, but I think we're right in line with what you're saying. And the charging stations and having electric fire trucks, that's really forward thinking, and that's probably beyond this, but that's interesting. But
Yeah, I can tick these off here. So we would definitely be looking at having potential for charging stations. It's part of the executive order by the state of Massachusetts, the governor. to go in that route, and as well as will be part of building codes, energy efficiency codes in the future anyways. So it's important to kind of have that infrastructure, even if we were to put simply the conduits underground so that a charging station could be built in the future in a lot cheaper to do it that way without digging everything up. So that definitely would be part of the plan. I actually know there are electric fire trucks today. They make them, they're very expensive. They don't work as well as they should. As you can imagine, it's a nascent technology still for first responders. It's premature to actually start planning for that in the building now, because by the time those are more well-developed, the energy requirements and the infrastructure requirements would be completely different than they are today, and it would be impossible for us at this point to really target that, I think, responsibly in terms of the money we would have to spend. That being said, you know, we will be planning this building to be all electric. It won't have any fossil fuels in it. So there would be the possibility that that could happen in the future, which sort of gets to your second point. There isn't currently fossil fuels planned for the building. It would be an all-electric HVAC system. The only fossil fuel that we'd be using would be as part of the backup generator, which needs to be a portable fuel source so that in an emergency they can fill the tank and keep the station running. What was the last point? I've forgotten that one. Underground utilities, yeah. So that is in fact part of every fire station project that we work on. Is typically you would do underground utility from the street. Now, of course, that leaves the vulnerability at the street, which this project can't really address at this point. But the fire department's very used to that scenario. That's why we have backup generators there. And if the building's all electric, we are pretty much self-sufficient as long as the fuel source can be maintained. So I think we are planning with a lot of those same features that you had been talking about. So I'm glad we're on the same page.
All right, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kathy Valeriani. I live on Sandwich Road, have been there 40 years, up by Ashumet Pond in Ashumet Valley. My concerns were mostly around Boyd DeMello addressed and the other gentleman before me, just about the size being adequate for not just now, but for 10 years and 20 years and 30 years, and not having to add on, make sure we kind of think of those things now. As a comment, I'm so grateful to the building committee, to the fire chief, to the select board, to all the administrators, everybody that's worked so hard on this. I myself have been working with the town and with our neighborhood as a former officer of the Ashumet Valley Property Owners. And I've been doing this since the day I moved in 40 years ago. And we almost had it just before 2008 and everything crashed. And there went everything, and we were starting over. I had worked closely with Glenn Rogers, who was a deputy chief when he left the town. But long time coming, so grateful, so needed. And just thank you all so very much for what you're doing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think everything we're doing is in line with what, looking ahead, and unless anyone has a specific comment. No? Okay. Sir?
Seth Adams. I'm a resident of town of Falmouth. Lived in Hatchville my entire life. My family's been there since the 70s. Probably can't throw a baseball, but definitely can hit a golf ball this far from where I grew up. I too am excited about a fire station in my neighborhood, although I'm not sure this is the fire station for my neighborhood. So I have a couple questions about how we got to this fire station. I've been to some of the meetings, as you know, some of the people here know, and it frustrates me that we can't seem to get an answer about an estimation of how many calls this station is going to get based on all the data we have for however many years we've been tracking how many calls there are. To me, it's very simple that however many calls the station is going to get is going to help define how big the station is, how many people are going to be there, what kind of equipment is there, what services it provides. But if you can't tell me whether there's going to be 10 calls a day, 2 calls a day, 500 calls a week, how can we decide whether we need a 3,000 square foot fire station, a 10,000 square foot fire station, or a 30,000 square foot fire station with obviously 2, 5, 10, 20 people in it? So I know there was some studies done at some point about how many calls there are in the town and what that means, the call distance, a whole bunch of things, but without an estimation of calls, how can we decide what size fire station we're going to have? And I'll go one step further. These guys are going to plan and draw a fire station, but if it doesn't fit, it seems like we're putting the cart before the horse. And I realize we got a schedule, there's a town meeting, you got to hit the date in public construction. I've been in there for 17 years. I know exactly what you're up against, this group. But it seems extremely premature if we don't know what we're trying to solve.
I appreciate the question, so thank you. Again, we were given this location to do. I don't want to deflect the question because it's one I asked too when I was thinking, but it seems like the metrics, from my understanding, aren't, as a non-firefighter, you would think, how things would work, but I don't know if anyone wants to comment on it, or it's kind of outside the purview of here.
I mean, it is and it isn't. I get, I'm asking a non-building construction question that to me is extremely linear to a building construction question, so yes and no.
Well, I think this area of town was identified to have needing a fire station back in the late 80s when the fire chief and I walked through the door of the fire station.
Yeah.
And it's been on the agenda for the fire department, if not the town, for all these years.
Yep.
And the lady from up Sandwich Road hit the nail on the head. There was some movement on it, and then things went sideways and went on. But the fire department's been, this has always been a topic of the roundtable discussion of the fire department of planning. Then, we came to the recent McGrath report that identified an area, and then a committee came out that was assembled by the town to cite where a new fire station should go, and they identified this as the area. Mm-hmm. So based on that data in the McGrath report and the previous committee's findings, this committee's tasked with building a fire station. Mm-hmm. So using the McGrath report and stuff, and planning for the future for the fire department is what we're trying to do here. Now, I don't personally, and it'll be way after my time in the fire department, see ever 20 people in the station, but, like I said before, earlier, every other station we've built in this town, we've added on to. Woods Hole Station built in 1979, we've added bedrooms to it. We're the old 5-pound what bag is down there, and it's in every other station.
Yeah.
Station 5 in East Falmouth, built in 1980, we've recently added bedrooms to increase the staffing, which staffing's been an issue for the fire department for many years. Right. So we're trying to address that. Yeah. We don't want to come back to the town of Falmouth in 15, 20 years or whatever and say, hey, we need more money to add on to the Hatchville station. There's other concerns moving forward that this committee currently isn't concerned with. There's other committees coming down the road with other projects. We know they're out there. The McGrath report identified it, and the town committee that was before us identified that as a need also, and that was prudent of them to do that.
Yeah.
They looked at the large picture here, and this is where we're at. We're trying to do this.
Yeah, I mean, the McGrath report also, it outlines West Falmouth, it outlines North Falmouth. I realize that, and that should be taken into consideration, and also would be taken in consideration with the call volume. And if there's improvements made to those fire stations, it should be considered in this fire station. And at the end of the day, I look around to the other towns that either I've bid on projects or I've built some of the fire stations on the Cape and off the Cape. And, I look at like a station on Red Brook Road in Mashpee. It was built in the mid-2000s. It's half the size of this. Now, the 5-minute radius that encompasses, I think you typically look at a 5-minute radius in driving distance when you look at fire stations. Half of the land area of the 5-minute radius is a conservation land, open space. of this fire station. And again, I want to make it clear what I said from the very, very beginning. I live in this neighborhood. I've had a fire at my house. I had a major loss. I am extremely supportive of a fire station here or anywhere in Hatchville. I don't question this location. I think it's great. There's a couple other locations in Hatchville, but this is the one. It's perfect. It's great. I just question, you know, at $650 a square foot, which is the going rate right now, is an 11,000 square foot fire station the right size for this community? Not even just today, but over the next 10 or 15 years. Because yeah, I don't want to build a fire station that's too small in 5 years. That's not what I'm up here trying to say. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot in that McGrath report. There's a lot of different things that are taken on. The town is going to take on a lot of projects, and I'm concerned that we're trying to solve 90% of the problems here, and then in 5 years or 3 years, we're going to solve another 90%. That's not good. That's not good management of money for the town.
Well, just in speaking to you referenced the Mashpee Station 2 over in Red Brook Road. In conversations with the administration over in Mashpee, you know, they've identified that station as, again, they were up against it the day they moved in. They could have used a bigger station over there. They don't have some admin areas. They could have used that third bay out there. They're looking at expanding out there as well. So it didn't fit their needs when they moved in, from what we can tell in conversations we've had with personnel over there. So, you know, if you draw, and you talk about your 5-minute response time, and I get that, there's a lot of conservation land out there, but we're charged with protecting that just as well. It's not just a structure. Two, and if you draw a 5-minute response time around some of the other stations, you'll find out half of them are in Buzzards Bay. So Falmouth geographically is very challenging for the town to manage, the fire department to manage, the police department. It's geographically challenged. It's 44 square miles, and it's not cut up into squares. We're not out in the middle of the plain states where everything's divided up into squares. So those are some of the challenges we're up against with this. And we hear you. You know, we hear what you're saying. And several of the committee discussions early on, and I don't recall if you were at the meetings or not, but George Rogers, the other co-chair in the committee, being a retired fire chief, questioned if we were actually building it too small now, and were we being too reserved? Are we? I don't think so. I think we've got a station that the town can support, and I think we have a station that in the future going forward, this is going to work. And you know, we just don't want to come back to the drawing board again.
I can appreciate not wanting to spend money twice. There's, you know, because when you come back and you're doing additions 50% more than you're doing now, I get that, and I'm not questioning any of that. But again, to go back to my original point, if we don't know how many calls there's going to be, I don't know how Context can really do their job properly. They've done what they can do with the information they're providing. I think they drew a nice fire station. It's a really great design, but I'm just not sure it's the right size.
Well, I think what I can say is definitely make great points, but I think our committee needs to take it under advisement, and as we get ready to April, maybe do some more homework and be able to better address something like that.
I appreciate you taking listen to my points.
Okay.
Maureen Harlow, Hawks, West Falmouth.
Hi.
One of the questions I did have, first of all, I agree with the last speaker that this is a great project as far as much needed in Hatchville, and it was actually 1957, I think it was, in a master plan for the town of Falmouth to put a station in Hatchville due to growth. I think it's been growing, and I think this is well overdue. That being said, the run times, we've been asking that question. I really think it's going to be asked on town meeting floor. You can, you know, hide the white elephant wherever you want it under the tent, but it's going to come up at town meeting, and you better come up with the run times, because that should dictate how the taxpayer is going to want to pay for this. We have, Station 1 has 57% of the calls, Woods Hole has 4%, East Falmouth has 27%, West Falmouth has 5%, North Falmouth has 12%, roughly. I'm just going by the McGrath report. There's zero knowledge on what the runs are in Hatchville. And that's going to come up. So I really hope that this committee, whoever does the homework for this, starts to do it, because that answer is going to dictate why we're building almost an 11,000 square foot building when we as taxpayers, and we were supporters of this to build this station, we were thinking it was going to be a substation. 11,000 square feet is not a substation. Headquarters is 16,000 square feet. Woods Hole is 1,700 square feet. East Falmouth is 2,020. West Falmouth is 1,260, and North Falmouth is 2,197 square feet. I'm just saying, substations serve people. 11,000, this is like a new headquarters. And I think we should look for the future, but everybody talks about fossil fuel. If you're building this and it's empty, who's heating it? Who's paying for the utilities and the electricity? And they all say, you know, we're not going to use fossil fuel. I don't know where people think electricity comes from. Mars, but it comes from a plant somewhere that makes electricity. So if we're going to do this, let's make it smaller and more efficient than making it bigger. Will there be a traffic light there for all these poor people that live across the street? Is it going to be flashing all night? Is it going to be something there?
All right, you had a couple of questions. Do you want to run them all and then we'll answer them? Or do
Okay.
you want to do?
Has there been a study on the growth in this area to know what you do need for the future, since it is a lot of conservation land? Is there a master plan for the fire department to know what is needed in the future for this area with staffing? We're struggling with staffing now. They have 6 rooms here. They're talking about, you know, it can sleep 12. We can't even get 2 in West Falmouth half the time. Woods Hole has 4% of the calls. It's been underutilized since the day it was built. It's a storage shed for equipment lots of times. I agree that we need this. I just think we need to scale it back to what the townspeople had asked for was a Hatchville station, a substation, not another new mini headquarters. And that's all I have to say, and I think you guys have done a great job, and I have watched how much work you've done, and I appreciate it.
Well, I thank you, and again, noted on the run times and on all that, that's something we have to do some homework on.
Yeah.
But as far as the terminology of substation, that's a very good point. I'm thankful you brought that up. I'll ask the architects about traffic controls.
There's no traffic light planned for the location.
No flashing light or anything?
Nope.
Okay. So it'd be more like actually West Falmouth is the only one that doesn't have one.
And as far as any of the master planning, that's outside the purview, you know.
Yeah,
that
of you guys, I know.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's, you know, what's out there.
But I think the McGrath report, you know, if somebody would just plug into that and get the run times for Hatchville, or, you know, what the percentage could be. You know, we talk about, you know, growth and future. I've lived here my entire life. I mean, we've been here 7 generations. I've seen Falmouth grow. Hatchville used to be literally like nobody lived there. It was farmland, just like East Falmouth. It is so developed now compared to before. But then you have to sit down and see how many building lots are available out there to say, you know, what is the real growth? Are there 300 building lots left in Hatchville? Are there 3,000? You know, then it would make total sense to add on or to build something for the future, or at least make it easy to add on to. I think Mr. Callahan and your group brought that up, that, you know, flat roof versus pitch roof. Adding on, there's a huge cost difference. But, you know, that bay is what, 5,000 something square feet? The open bays? I think it's almost half the size of the building, right? Maybe, well, whatever. That's going to have to be heated, just so all you energy people understand. You have to keep the floors, probably they're going to have some kind of, you know, heat to keep the engines when they come in the winter and their hoses are all frozen, that's what they need. So this, you know, it's like building your house with no children yet, but you build 5 bedrooms, and you're going to heat those 5 bedrooms until the kids are born. So I just hope we're not building this so big and costing the taxpayers. Energy is, you know, I think it was what, estimated around $38,000 for the energy cost for that, roughly?
The annual operational costs?
Yeah, I mean, the last meeting was all about the high vac and all that stuff, and there was a number. I couldn't really read it on this, but I think it was like $38,000 a year or something.
We don't have the numbers with us, but we can get that.
Okay, well, everybody's worried about energy and the cost of energy. I think that's a really big number for a building that's going to be empty until you want to fill it with the children, which are the new guys and the equipment. Anyway, but thank you for answering the questions you could answer.
I think one other thing we'd like to bring up is, I know you were sort of listing off what the size of some of the other substations are, but when those were built or maybe appropriated as existing buildings, I'm not sure, there was not the level of code that there is now, the NFPA code and the building code. And when Jeff was doing his presentation, he alluded to that with the fact that, you have the cancer issues now with the fire department when they're bringing, whatever's back on them on their turnout gear. You have to include the decon areas. You basically have a hot zone and a cold zone where probably a lot of those older stations do not. So that adds to the square footage of a building just to meet code.
Yeah, I did listen at your meetings, and I understand the new regulations. But if you looked at North Falmouth with an upgrade, West Falmouth with an addition and an upgrade, and a smaller substation, more like Red Brook, it would still cost less than this one station, and you'd fix 3 problems. You give the people in Hatchville the services that they deserve and need. You give the firefighters what they need in North Falmouth for upgrading and giving them their services that they need. And West Falmouth could get an addition and put an engine in and bring it up to code, and it's still, I know that a lot of these guys crunch numbers, and it's still less than what just this one station costs. So I think you just have to get ready for town meeting, because they're going to hammer you way worse.
All right, well, thank you for those points.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Dan Shearer. I live in West Falmouth. I've heard and discussed and worked to have this location have a fire station for, I think, 15 to 20 years as a town meeting member, which I think I've been 40. I'm 84 years old, and I think this whole group to build a station has done one of the worst jobs I've ever seen. I would be ashamed if I was a selectman on this committee to not have a total plan. You are dividing the town. You are not telling us what we have. I mean, I would have laughed if somebody had told me you were going to have 7 bedrooms in a small local fire station. I think you ought to rent them out. And if town meeting comes and asks us for an override to build this, and the town of Falmouth or a town meeting okays it, it's going to be the biggest fight and disaster this town has ever had, because we need a full plan. We need to know what's going to happen to West Falmouth, North Falmouth, and this station. We can't do one at a time. We can't live with this. In 5 years, you're going to do that. I won't live if I have another heart attack in West Falmouth and I have to depend on this fire station. And I don't think that's right. We have 3 fire stations now, if this one's built in this area. We've got to have them all, and we've got to use them all. And 11,000 square feet is, I don't think most of the people in this room really know what 10 or 11,000 square feet is. And if you go out to Stir Crazy, which I think everybody knows where that is, it's on 28, it's a restaurant, drive into their parking lot and keep going down the road to a new warehouse that's being built that's 10,000 square feet. And look and see how large that is. It is a monster. And I'm sorry, I hope or people understand we are a community. We're not separate people. We have to protect the other parts of town. We voted for this override a while ago, which we didn't get anything for except a lot of free cash. But please, don't vote for this, any money, until we have a complete plan. And well, thank you for all your work, and I hope you can do this for us.
Well, thank you for your input. I appreciate it. Any other questions? Well, great. I guess this will conclude our public presentation portion. We're going to roll into a building committee meeting just to tie up some loose ends that, you know, is open to the public, or they're welcome to stay. But I'd ask the building committee maybe to come down to the front row, and we can just, and if you want to leave, you can leave. If you want to stay, you can stay.